Okay, so this is somewhat experimental. I'm not sure how well or poorly this will work, but I have with me on through the computer my cousin Frank, who is a retired foreign service, American foreign service officer, posted in many different countries. We've talked before, so thanks for being here, Frank.
Sure. Delighted to join you again, Garen.
So if you are in the chat, please let me know that you can actually hear him when he's speaking, as he just did. Can you all hear? Okay, so let's just first get that sorted out and make sure that that's the case. But Frank was he's now a professor emeritus. He's retired from teaching after his career in foreign service, and we just wanted to talk about what's going on in the world, just how weirdly disruptive things are. Like I mean, tell me if I'm characterizing that wrong. Like this is a bizarre time. I mean, I don't know, have you seen a time like this that was this mm, I don't know what to say, awkward, or this much odd, we don't know which way to things are going to go, injected into the system?
Um, a lot has been said about Trump's deal making, diplomacy. Um, as a diplomat, let me characterize it as unconventional.
Okay. So unconventional, and that's why you are a diplomat.
Darren, I had the great privilege of serving as one of Uncle Sam's diplomats for 25 years.
Hmm.
I served under Republican and Democratic administrations. I watched some amazing diplomacy taking place. And this unconventional diplomacy that we are seeing violates just about every principle of diplomacy 101.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Uh,
understand. So it feels like I guess the word I'm looking for is, like, in the marketplace, the market doesn't like uncertainty. I would imagine diplomats don't either. Like, I
that's
didn't like Obama. I'm a Republican. I didn't like Obama, but at least I was certain about what he was going to do. Um, and if you're on the left side of the spectrum and you didn't like, say, Bush, at least you were pretty sure the direction that Bush was going to go. But Trump is just it's hard to figure him out.
Diplomacy is not improv.
Yeah, great line. Yeah.
Um, it involves knowing your opponent. It involves psychological evaluation and assessment. It involves knowing the other side and where that other side is coming from. It involves prep to define your desired goals, where you think the other person is coming from, assessing the interests and goals of both sides. And this is particularly important as we look at attempts to come to an agreement on between Ukraine and Russia, is degree of commitment. In other words, the will of the two parties. And in this case, we have absolutely rock solid iron will on both sides.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure how Trump thought he was going to solve this as quickly as he said he was. I mean, I know that it was a campaign promise, that he didn't expect to actually finish something in 24 hours, but with some of these dust ups, the iron will wasn't there. So we have six or so different events: Thailand and Cambodia, and Pakistan and India, and they get frustrated with each other periodically. Certainly Israel and Iran, or Israel and Gaza, right? I mean, certainly those things are pretty significant as well, but not like this. Like, Russia has to keep going in order to be the empire it dreams about being, and Ukraine has to keep going or they're enslaved. And so there's no stopping on either side.
Exactly. Um, First of all, Putin has primed his people to expect complete victory, which means his de facto control of Ukraine, ending its independence and sovereignty, whether he captures the whole thing or whether he puts another puppet in charge, a Lukashenko mini-me, if you like. Bottom line is Ukraine is brought back into the welcoming arms of Mother Russia. And to lock that in 2014, Crimea was formally annexed to Russia. And in 2022, those four border provinces, now mostly occupied by Russia, those are now in every Russian map. Schools everywhere.
Yeah.
How, as a leader,
and according to their constitution,
go
right?
back
I
on
mean,
that?
so our constitution says we can't give it up. Well, so does ours. So
Yeah. So there is zero chance of anything significant coming from all of the running around and peace talks and all of that, complicated by the fact that you have a person who keeps trying and misreading the whole process. You know, all of this talk, Putin is just a superb manipulator.
okay, let me stop you with what you just said. So keeps misreading the process. You're talking about Trump is misreading the process. So you think that he's just not getting it as opposed to that he has a particular plan?
He has no plan.
Okay.
His
And
plan,
that's my read as well. I just didn't want to put words in your mouth.
no, I see
And
zero evidence of prep, of planning. It's my good friend, Vladimir. He talks nice to me. We talk softly. We have these great talks. And this goes right back to manipulation.
mhm.
If you take a look at our recent presidents, Putin has treated each of them very, very differently because he's got psychological profiles on them and he knows what he thinks will work with each one.
Mhm.
Where you recall when Clinton went to Russia. Well, Clinton had this amazing, charismatic personality.
Mhm.
He wanted to press the flesh. He wanted to meet Russians. If Russians met Clinton besides Putin, you know what their reaction would be. So Putin very cleverly, despite prior planning, changed the plans and kept him from meeting any Russian ordinary citizens. With Bush, he knew Bush was religious, so he played that angle. You remember Bush's statement, I looked into his eyes and I saw his soul. The counterpart to that.
Hold on. That's really, let me stop you there. That's a really interesting observation there, because he doesn't play that kind of card at all with Trump. Trump not being religious, right? So
exactly, he adjusts his approach, the way he talks, the things he talks about. This is very intelligent. It's coldly calculated. I like John McCain's rejoinder to Bush's remark. I looked in in Putin's eyes and I saw three letters: KGB.
yeah, I have a question for you here from somebody in the audience. John McElrevy says, "How do you deal with such a disingenuous actor like Russia?"
You assume that they are being disingenuous, and you have to figure out, is there any hope of dealing with them? Go back to Reagan on this one. Trust but verify.
Mhm.
I would actually flip that around with Putin: is first verify, then don't trust. But you absolutely cannot believe anything any Russian official says unless confirmed by 2, 3, 4 reliable sources.
Yeah.
They just lie routinely, and Russia has done this for centuries.
Yeah. Your time at the State Department spanned what years?
75 to 2000.
Okay, so this was height of Cold War to the implosion into Russia. Do you see a difference of Soviet and Russia in meaningful ways, or is it basically the same thing carrying on?
It's the same thing with less of the overlay of communist ideology.
Okay.
Russia has not changed in centuries. Russia, well, Moscovia got its start at the end of 200 years of Mongol rule called the Golden Horde,
Hmm.
and Moscovia got its start as enforcers for the Mongols. And whether under czars or Soviet commissars or now under Putin, Russia has been a vertical society. You are somebody's underling and you are somebody's overlord, and you bow and scrape to your overlord and you abuse your underlings. This is a standard feature of Russian personality.
Hmm.
And it has not changed much. We had a brief flare up of attempts at democracy after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But nothing much has changed. Russia never went through the Enlightenment.
Yeah,
You
that's
feel,
right. They missed that, and they also missed after World War II having to actually come to terms with what they've done. Kevin Delaney,
exactly.
I'll come back to you and what you were just saying about the Enlightenment and that sort of thing in just a moment. Kevin Delaney popped up and said, "Is the Cold War mindset ego who just wants to slice off nations? Is Trump a Cold War mindset ego who just wants to slice off nations and will let Putin and Xi have theirs? Like, is his idea just, this is our area, that's your zone of influence, that's your zone of influence? Is that what do you think where Trump is?"
I don't think Trump thinks that deeply.
Okay.
There is no I see his mind working like ricochet rabbit. It just goes from one idea to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Watch any news conference. Yesterday or 2 days ago, what they had the FIFA representative talking about the World Cup, and Trump just went off in this really weird way, the way he does, talking first of all about his great photo with Putin, and completely ignored the FIFA representative who was there.
Yeah,
So
that was bizarre. I
I
wanted to
can't
raise
describe
that.
any deep thinking. There is no deep thinking here. It's sort of whims that come to mind, or the last person that he talked to mentioned this, and that sounded like a really good idea.
Yeah, I wanted to raise that particular incident because he pulls out this picture of Trump and Putin, saying that Putin wants his autograph. And I was thinking, can you imagine Reagan interrupting a different press conference about, I don't know, they're building schools or whatever it is that they're doing, and hey, by the way, Gorbachev sent me this. He really admires me. He wants my autograph. When you put
I
it in those
can't.
terms, it sounds so even more like you can see Trump doing this, but even if you didn't see it, right? Like you can imagine it in your mind's eye, like it makes sense for him somehow. Can you imagine that with Reagan? I mean, doesn't that just strike you as bizarre?
I cannot imagine that with any previous
No,
president.
that's a good point. Yeah. It's just
And getting back to manipulation, um, Putin zeroed in on Trump his first term, and he had him figured out. Created this budding bromance. Don't know really what's at the base of that, except Trump admires strong people and wants to be a strong person. I think he has personal, to the extent that a narcissist can have personal doubts, uh, feelings of inferiority that he tries to compensate for when in the presence of somebody like Putin. Um, the I think the bottom line here is that Putin knows how to manipulate him.
mm,
The Europeans in the most recent conference at the White House have finally gotten together, and despite eye rolls and everything else, have finally figured out how to do Trump speak. And as a result, we're able to get him to agree to a number of very common sense positions. He still wouldn't go with the ceasefire, which was goal number one. Well, actually, goal number one on the European side was nothing decided about Ukraine without Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he has now bought into that. I'm hesitant to say bought into with any sense of permanence with Trump, but I think he's accepted that, at least for the moment. Hasn't accepted the peace corps, the ceasefire, but he's going along with them, at least at first, in the area of security guarantees.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this whole discussion about security guarantees is pointless because Ukraine is the only serious army in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
They've got almost 1 million people under arms. And the next biggest, and they're trying to ramp it up quickly, is Poland with 250,000 in their military. And Britain, France, and Germany are all in the 200,000s. And when it comes down to the question of will, I see no significant commitment from the public in any of those countries to be willing to put people on the ground who will actually fight.
Mm.
The ones who came into, for example, Iraq and Afghanistan, many of them, Brits excluded, were not willing to adopt any serious rules of engagement, which meant they actually had to fight. And even though this is next door, and it is waking up the leadership, and they're starting to redress the erosion of their defense industries, I see no likelihood that they would ever put troops on the ground and be willing to take casualties.
So that's interesting coming from you, like when you had your State Department time from 75 to 2000. So you see the peace dividend and all those other things that came after the collapse of the Soviet Union. It seems like Europe just didn't keep up and was happy to just have the status quo where they could run the welfare states that they had there and not spend on military because, you know, nothing was going to happen. Is that where we are? What's leading into this, and we haven't shaken that mentality?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they're shaking it now.
Yeah.
But for the last 3 decades, it's been there's never ever going to be a land war in Europe again. And so why would you spend money on military? And so all of them, their militaries have shrunk drastically. And of course, the defense industries have also eroded because there are no long-term contracts of any size.
So
now all of a sudden you're trying to ramp up and provide 1 million plus rounds of 155 millimeter ammunition to the Ukrainians.
So you're saying that they're waking up now. I don't think it was Trump with the 5%. I think it was Putin was more of the cause of the 5% for NATO. Put yourself in a place of Europe's just let's make up a place in Europe. It doesn't matter what state. You're a European diplomat. What are you thinking as you're looking at what's going on about, is Putin actually coming for you? Is Trump going to do anything? Is Trump going to do something terrible? like how are you processing this if you're an average European diplomat?
I think a statement that was made by a European leader a while back, well, within the last couple of months, kind of encapsulates it. There's no reason why 440 million Europeans should depend on 330 million Americans to protect them from 140 million Russians who can't defeat 38 million Ukrainians.
It's a great line.
In other words, it's on us. We have to do it. And if we get assistance from the United States, well and good. But with this president, we cannot assume that what he says from one day to the next will hold. Now, I don't think they're very concerned about getting American weapons. And I don't think Trump will ever stop those, provided he doesn't have to pay for them.
Mm-hmm.
He's a businessman. If the Europeans cough up $100 million for a Patriot system, he gets to go to American workers and say, look at all the jobs I'm giving you.
Yep.
No skin off my nose. I'm going to sell this to the Europeans. They can do with it what they want. If they want to give it to Ukraine, that's fine. And this is another plus. My impression is he's not only willing to sell whatever they want to buy, he's not putting restrictions on transfers of U.S. equipment. We generally have a clause called the ITAR, I-T-A-R,
Mm-hmm.
which says if we sell you an F-16, you cannot transfer it to any third party without our approval. This was one of the big handicaps in the early, in the first years of the invasion, because the Dutch, for example, are one of the most ferocious against Russia. They remember the Malaysian Airlines being shot down and killing 200 of their citizens. And so they were transitioning from their F-16s to American F-35s. So their instinctive goal in the first months was, okay, we will train some Ukrainian pilots and we'll give them our F-16s.
Mm-hmm.
And Biden for 3 years says, no, you won't.
Yep. So Biden, to my mind, slow walked aid because he was afraid of escalating. That doesn't seem to be the same issue at root with Trump. How do you compare the differences?
Well, I think Trump doesn't really care. For Trump is in this, he doesn't care how any peace agreement would work out. He wants to be able to wave another peace agreement, piece of paper, and say, hello, Nobel Prize, Peace Prize. Biden was overly concerned about escalation. And I put this principally on his national security advisor, Sullivan. Very early after the invasion, the Russian national security advisor got to Sullivan and started waving the nuclear, rattling the nuclear weapons. And Sullivan and Biden bought into the don't escalate, we're going to use nukes. Yep. And this happened with every single weapon system. So I think it was retired General Ben Hodges who went after this, saying, instead of worrying about what the Russians are doing, Russia should be worrying about what we might do.
Yep. And
that's the fundamental flaw in the whole Biden approach, is that we were scared of what they were going to do, instead of having Russia worry about all of the no longer needed but still useful equipment that we have in storage that we could have unloaded on the Ukrainians. If Biden had given to Ukraine in the first year what he eventually dragged out and gave them by year 3, the war would have been over in year 1.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's fair to say that Russia deterred the United States in the Biden administration. If that's the case, how would you explain what Russia is doing with Trump?
He's leaning on his bromance, and he's kicking the can down the road very successfully. By February, we had that unfortunate ambush of Zelensky in the Oval Office, and Trump demanded an immediate and unconditional ceasefire, comprehensive unconditional ceasefire. And Zelensky, despite reservations, said, okay, we're in.
And that was 161, no, 100, I can't remember, more than 160 days ago now.
Yeah, 6 months ago. And so Putin was not interested in a ceasefire, but he had the good sense not to say he wasn't interested. Oh, yeah. Oh, Donald, what a great idea. Now we need to work out how exactly this would take place. And we have to be careful about what the Ukrainians might be up to at the same time and kick the can down the road 2 weeks at a time or 50 days at a time, which turned into 10 days at a time.
Hmm.
Um, and Alaska is the perfect example of that.
Well, tell me about
On,
Alaska. How did you see what happened in Alaska?
yeah, it's very simple. On Air Force One, on the way to Alaska, Trump is talking to Brett Baer
Hmm.
and using some of his stronger language. I'm not happy, if that counts as strong language, with what Putin has been doing. If I don't get a ceasefire of some kind from this meeting, there are going to be serious consequences.
Hmm.
He meets with Putin. Putin makes him wait on the tarmac. Um, Putin's Lavrov, his foreign minister, comes off the plane wearing a CCCP, a Soviet Union sweatshirt. This is trolling.
So talk about that point. If what how would a diplomat see this thing? It's not. It's like this is not something that you would have done anywhere else, right? I mean, like that would have just been bad form.
No, well, Putin does this all the time. He's had Witkoff waiting up to 2 hours to talk to him, just twiddling his thumbs. Um, a lot of people who aren't attuned to this kind of sort of, what do we call it, signaling,
Hmm.
um, don't pick up on this, and our media certainly didn't notice it. I mean, some of them saw it, oh, CCCP sweatshirt, that's kind of cool. They didn't interpret it, and then they go into the meeting for 2 hours. So Trump goes in saying no ceasefire, serious consequences, and Putin works him for 2 hours, and all of a sudden ceasefires and serious consequences are totally off the table,
That's right.
vanished. And then Putin takes control of the rest of the summit. He cancels the lunch, informs people he'll be leaving, and he'll make a statement, but he's not taking any questions from the media. All of which overturned the agenda that the United States thought it had.
Okay.
Then he gets back, and in Russia, of course, they're celebrating this triumph.
Hmm.
Uh, People in Russia are wearing red hats that looks just like the MAGA hat. It's Mara, Mara, make Alaska Russian
Hmm.
again,
Yeah.
and all kinds of other humiliating themes and memes that appear, and they only, of course, appear in Russia if the authorities approve of them.
So in your estimation, why do you think Putin or Trump is just allowing Putin to write the script or allow this? Is it just the bromance? Is Putin just awesome KGB kind of like I hear various views like Putin is this great KGB mastermind or no, he was a low level KGB functionary, but what's going on here? What like
Well,
how do you interpret it?
he was a low-level functionary, but he's fully trained KGB, a professional KGB officer. So manipulation comes as part of that. And remember, before he became president, he headed the KGB in Russia. Came out of St. Petersburg and serving under Yeltsin. Yeltsin gave him oversight of the KGB. So he's got this built into his background. And he knows, I mean, look at what he has gained
Hmm.
from Putin, from
Trump.
Trump. Uh, I give regular presentations on Ukraine to various groups, retired military, retired intel, et cetera, others here in Florida. And in a November presentation, Trump had been elected. So the obvious direction for that presentation was, okay, so where do we go from here? So I went to Trump's Art of the Deal. I said, okay, he says he's going to solve this in 24. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But if he really wants to solve it, make a deal, I presume he's going to go to his Art of the Deal. Principle number one is always deal from strength. Leverage is the biggest strength you have. And principle number two is escalate to de-escalate. So my expectation was if he followed his own Art of the Deal, he would ramp up pressure, economic and military, on Putin so that he had leverage. He was dealing from strength. He was escalating to de-escalate. And for whatever reason, he did exactly the opposite.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
He gave away item after item after item after item, starting with refusing to say that Russia had invaded Ukraine. Well, we're not going to talk about this. We're not going to talk about that. Of course, they can't get into NATO. All of which should have been on the table as points of leverage. And he has consistently avoided developing any leverage. For example, with the Alaska summit, thanks to Melania, he was getting confronted with all the evils that Russia does night after night after night after night, killing and wounding Ukrainians. Melania called his attention, and he repeated this. He said, I was talking and I said I had a call with Vladimir today and I thought it all went very well. And Melania told me, well, you know, he bombed a maternity hospital. And so that, I think, is what first got him on first got onto his serious radar about the evening assaults, almost exclusively civilian targets. If you want to have a summit, and I'm guessing that Putin, I don't know this, but I'm guessing that Putin suggested Alaska.
Yeah, I don't know that either. That would be my speculation as well.
For all very obvious reasons. And Putin desperately, he's been a pariah for 3.5 years.
Yep.
Nobody else of consequence in the world will talk to him. And now here's his golden opportunity to be seen on the world stage with Trump.
Yep.
If you were looking for leverage, this would be a prime opportunity to use it. For example, well, good friend Vladimir, if you'd like to get together and talk, how about you stop killing civilians for the next week, 2 weeks? There was no attempt to even do that.
Yeah. So why is he taking the exact opposite approach of what you would expect? Sanctions, I would expect to bring you to the table. Lack of sanctions, because I'm going to be nice, to bring you to the table. It's just like seems wrong. Like there would be speculation, and people talk about this kind of thing all the time. He's Agent Krasnov. He's working for Putin. Putin has dirt on him. I can't think of what Putin could possibly have on him that he, like, the guy's like shameless. So, like, what do you make of that kind of speculation?
And I mean, I've heard the same speculation, and nobody has any good answers. I mean, he was by himself trying to cut economic deals in Russia well before he got involved in politics. The KGB routinely looks for opportunities for compromat, to compromise visitors. And here we have a very rich American who wants to set up maybe a Trump hotel or something. What are they going to do? They're going to try to develop some compromat. Did they get it? Is it significant? Is it something Trump would never ever want to appear? Who knows? But that's standard procedure for the KGB for any visitor to Russia.
While we're out there on crazy kind of theories, somebody asked Dr. Janista, do you believe Putin or Putin's double went to Alaska? Okay, how do you process when people talk about Putin having a double?
He probably has two.
Okay.
Facial ID should be able to detect the difference, and I'm guessing that our intelligence services do that. I do not expect a double would have gone to Alaska, because this is Putin's one-on-one with good friend Donald, and we not want to get him off the serious consequences and off the ceasefire. I need to do that myself. I'm not going to trust a double to do that. Doubles only do PR events.
Okay. So showing up in a in Mariupol, for example, that
Sure.
that could have been double if they do have that.
Yeah, certainly anything near the front lines. He's paranoid for good reason about his security. And so anything where there was the slightest hint of possible danger, hey, double, you go do this.
Okay. So another person, Jonathan McElravy says, can you explain the reluctance over the years to directly confront Russia's aggression? Like, it seems like every presidential administration, whether it's Hillary's reset button or George W. Bush looking into the eyes or whatever, they're just like, Obama didn't want to touch 2014, give up Crimea. Let's just like let them have it. What's going on?
Excellent observation, Jonathan. You're absolutely right. And the reason is that democracies have a horrible problem of taking on upfront costs. If there's any way to defer a difficult decision, especially a difficult decision that may not be well received by your political party or by the general population, we're not going to do it. We're going to have to be dragged kicking and screaming into doing something that would require what we were willing to do during the Cold War, which is really do serious confrontation. So that explains, I mean, part of what explains 2014 is that it was a very effective fait accompli. Russia already had its main naval base in Sevastopol on Crimea. It was very easy to quietly move in a bunch of Marines and then instantly take over Crimea. Remember, there was almost no fighting in Crimea. It was just done. So then you're Obama. What do? You're going to go to war with Russia over this part of Ukraine? No, you've got no options. So you say strong words,
Yeah,
and put out a few sanctions, and there are bigger fish to fry working with Russia. So the
yeah.
little
NATO
sanctions
wasn't
are
about to go to
little less.
war over that.
Right.
Okay, so Kevin Delaney asks about NATO. Does the NATO have to restructure, or will it have to restructure to accommodate Ukraine, given where Hungary is, or how do you see that playing out?
I like the idea of NATO light. This is where Sweden and Finland were before they joined.
Mm-hmm.
For years, they were moving to NATO standard equipment, comms, etc., interoperability, exercises without being part of NATO.
Did they have any kind of mutual support pact, Finland and Sweden, and like whoever was non-aligned like that? I mean, Switzerland doesn't have any real problems, but like, let's say Finland.
Finland is very proud of the fact that everybody gets military training. They learned their lesson in the Winter War.
Yep.
Both about the dangers of Russia. I mean, the grandparents, I guess, of President Stubb are from a town in what used to be Finland and that the Russians grabbed as part of the Winter War. So the Finns have always been really, really tough. And so while they were forced into Finlandization, as it was called, sort of forced neutrality for much of the Cold War, they always knew that if there was a chance to get out from under Russia, they were going to do it. So that's why, with the collapse of Russia, they immediately started working closely with first fellow Nordics and the Baltics. And then, as I said, started actually deliberately designing their military to be increasingly interoperable with NATO, doing first small scale, small unit joint exercises and then larger and larger exercises with NATO countries, with the United States. Sweden was doing exactly the same thing. And so they were most of the way to NATO at the time that Russia invaded in 2022. So it was a very quick, easy decision and heavily supported by public opinion in both countries. There's no reason why something similar, analogous, couldn't be done in Ukraine. Ukraine has already achieved an incredible change in their military. When the Russians invaded just 3 years ago, they were almost exclusively Soviet era equipment. They are now largely NATO equipment.
And they can operate everything.
And they can operate. This is absolutely incredible. Can you imagine the logistics challenge of having 7, 8, 9, 10 different types of armored vehicles and tanks and everything that all the neighbors are providing? And yet they're doing it. And they're generally getting more out of what we provide than we can do.
Yep.
I mean, they are shooting down weapons or missiles with our Patriot 2s, not even Patriot 3s, which our operators didn't think could be done. And they're doing this with every bit of equipment that we give them, in addition to completely changing the nature of warfare through air drones, ground drones, sea drones. So
okay.
you can I don't see a peace.
Okay.
I see a long-term collapse of Russia.
Well,
Ukrainians are far more motivated. They cannot give up, as you said earlier. I mean, the simple slogan is, if Russia stops fighting, there's no war. If Ukraine stops fighting, there's no Ukraine. And it's not just land. A lot of Americans, Westerners, get all caught up with drawing lines on maps. That's not it. It's the existence of a Ukrainian nation, language, people, culture. The Russians first started trying to erase Ukraine. We can trace it back to Peter the Great, 1720, 305 years ago. He bans the use of Ukrainian language. And the Ukrainians have been tortured, murdered, deported, starved to death for 305 years. And the Russians haven't broken them, whether under czars or commissars or now under Putin, because they are fighting for their very existence. Russia is destroying every museum it can get its hands on, looting them and taking all of the artifacts back to Russia to be declared Russian. In the occupied, and this is not abstract for the Ukrainians. Ukrainians can see what's going on in the occupied territories. This is what's going to happen to you guys if Russia breaks you, if you give up. So you have no rights, constant surveillance, arrests, Ukrainian language is banned. Your kids have to go to school in Russian curriculum, speak only Russian. If you don't accept a Russian passport, then we take your house and we invite Russians in to take your property. The ones who fled, well, we're inviting Russians in to take your property. We are basically erasing you from the planet. I mean, Putin wrote in July 2021 this essay on Ukrainians and Russians, making the point there's never been any such thing as a Ukrainian identity, nation,
Mm-hmm.
culture. And the guy who wrote that essay is the one who's running the invasion. So this is about eradication, enslavement.
So that leads me to an interesting concept here. So I used to think for the last couple of years until a few months ago, I just the evidence seemed overwhelming to change my view. I used to think Russia's trying to bomb Ukrainians at night to cause them to turn on Zelensky and the government and force a peace. I don't think that anymore. I think now that Russia actually just wants to destroy everything Ukrainian. They're happy to destroy a museum. They're happy to destroy homes and cause some kind of humanitarian crisis. Nowhere to live, no water, no whatever. It's just genocide light. I mean, not light. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's not.
Yeah.
It's just they want to destroying a civilian is as good as destroying a military person to that mindset. Am I wrong, or what am I missing?
No, you're absolutely right. Precisely right. And if you follow Russian media, since the beginning, they've talked openly in their talk shows about the importance of erasing Ukraine. If necessary, we'll kill them all. That's, again, to go my previous point, nothing gets on Russian television unless it's approved by the censors and it's in line with Russian policy. And I have video after video after video saying, kill them all, erase them. They're animals.
Well, they're worse than animals. They are Russians who have turned traitor to Russia, and therefore they must be killed. Is the way that I have seen them discuss it.
Yeah, sure. That's the way it's portrayed.
So someone here said Russia's always seen Ukraine as a threat. Why is Ukraine a threat to Russia?
Ukraine is not a threat to Russia. Never has been. This is Russian propaganda talking points. You have to have some reason that you are going to invade. Now, the real reason is that Putin thinks that the worst thing that ever happened to Russia in its history was the collapse of the superpower Soviet Union. And he has compared himself to Peter the Great in terms of wanting to restore greater Russia, restore the Ruski Mir, the Russian world, as to where it should be. This includes every place where a Russian sets foot. He said this in a recent conference. There really is no difference between Ukrainians who really are Russian. So in that sense, we already have Ukraine. It's really Russia. But we have an old saying, not exactly a proverb, but an old saying that everywhere a Russian soldier's foot steps is Russia. And they have clearly talked about the Balkans as being a part as well of Russia. So this is built in. Gary Kasparov, who you quote sometimes, and I really respect, has said the only way this ends is with a Russian defeat, because there is within the Russian soul an imperial virus. Russia doesn't need more territory. 25% of Russians don't even have flush toilets or running water. They could do so much more with the territory that they have. But the ones who run Russia are the Slavs in the West, who look down on the other 200 or so minorities within Russia. So their focus is going west, and the going west is taking back territories that they see as Russian.
So expand on that. So what does that really mean? What they want to accomplish here? Are we talking about taking back former Soviet Union? Because they talk about that quite a bit, the former Soviet states. So if I was Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia, I'd be nervous. Or does it expand into Warsaw Pact countries? So you should be nervous if you're in Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, etc.
You certainly should be worried if you're in Moldova, with Russian troops in that sort of fake sliver of land called Transnistria, on your border. Russia is whatever the Russians say it is, and whatever is achievable. So first,
that's really interesting. Say that again. I don't want that to slip.
Russia is whatever Russians say it is, and whatever is achievable. So you may not right now talk about taking back Kyrgyzstan, for example, because that's some of those minority peoples. You first talk about Ukraine and the three Baltics. If you thought you could do it, you might talk about physically taking Poland, but that's extremely unlikely. And so what you want there is to intimidate your neighbors so that they are compliant. And whatever of that you can achieve, then you push forward with that. What was Stalin's old line? Thrust forward with the bayonet. If you strike steel, withdraw. Implication, if you don't strike steel, you just keep right on going.
Well, and that's what a bully does, right? A bully picks on that kid in the corner of the playground playing Dungeons and Dragons. He doesn't go after the captain of the football team or the linebackers.
Right.
Okay. So I have some other questions for you that are along these lines here. What do you think why do you think Trump was complimenting the picture of him and Putin? After all the meetings and all the examples of horrors this man has done to Ukraine, how does Trump process that and think, yeah, this is great, while all this is happening simultaneously?
They disconnect. The bromance trumps, literally. He's got this sense of admiration, friendship, what he thinks is friendship, with Putin, and Putin plays that up big time. Oh, Donald, I'd really like an autographed photograph.
Yeah.
And this just has Trump preening.
So the Europeans seem to have figured out how to speak to him. They're doing the same thing to him. Why is it that he's listening to Putin and not the Europeans?
Because the bromance was established during his first term.
Okay. All right. Other questions here. Trump always talks about land swap. What do you think about Zelensky calling his bluff and saying that they'll give up Donbass if Russia gives up Crimea? I've never heard that one being on the table, but that's a funny way to approach it.
Yeah, and that Zelensky is an excellent comedian. He knows how to score points, and that's all that says. That's just point scoring. The part of Donbass that Putin has recently thrown into the discussion is an absolute non-starter. The UK intelligence came out this month with an assessment looking at the so-called summer offensive that the Russians have underway, and looking at the progress previously made, and said that taking the remainder of Donbass, which is about a third of the province or the oblast, at the current rate of progress would take 4.4 years at an additional 1.9 million casualties. People don't realize how little progress has been made. Again, Finland steps up very nicely. reminds people, and other European leaders have said the same thing, that in the last 3 years, Russia, the great Russian army, has conquered less than 1% of Ukraine at a cost of over 1 million casualties.
Yep.
And then some others, The Economist and Forbes, also came out with great speculation that if they wanted to take Kiev, it would take them 35 years at the current rate of progress. If they want to take all of Ukraine, it might be, who knows, 2070 or something. So the Ukrainians are doing a great job of bleeding Russia out, maximizing innovation and technology to make up for their lack of numbers, and consistently just playing defense, because in a sort of the warfare standard is you need 4 times more people on offense to overcome defenders. And just a rough ballpark figure. The Russians are bleeding far, far more than that. And they're getting little towns. The biggest town they took 2 years, Bakhmut, and it was a pre-war town of maybe a small city of 60,000.
Mm-hmm.
The fortress cities that are facing Russia in the western part of Donbass, 2 of them are over 100,000. I think one is close to 200,000. This is all pre-war population, of course. And the Ukrainians helpfully build with concrete. And so every city is a concrete fortress. And all Ukrainian buildings of size, and most homes, have basements.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a protected place, and concrete buildings create natural pillboxes, ambush sites. Doesn't matter if it's blown apart. It's the concrete is still there. You're still protected. You can still ambush. So, well, here's another fact. Since the war broke out, the Russians have taken no regional capital.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, during 2014, they got the capitals of Donetsk and Luhansk.
Mm-hmm.
But what they've captured in Zaporizhia and Kherson are not the capitals, the regional capitals. So they've captured 0 cities since, let's say, December of 2022. In that time, when they first flooded in February, they took up to 30%, maybe depending on figures, 35% of Ukraine. Then the counterattacks forced them back to the 18% that they then occupied by December. And from December 2022 till now, they have captured less than 1%. So they're still at around 19% of Ukraine. None of it of any value, because everything they've captured, they've had to absolutely level in order to take it.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds exactly right. Okay, I have a couple of diplomatic kind of questions for you here, and that's kind of your strongest bread and butter strong suit. Past U.S. presidents are sympathetic to Putin, enabled and didn't confront strongly, like, as you said, George W. Bush, looking to Putin's eyes, Obama with the reset button, now Trump. Can the U.S. recover from this?
No, with Trump.
Well, I mean, just like we just keep playing the same song, and with Trump, it's just the worst iteration of this. Like,
okay, but like I said, democracies will not generally risk an immediate harm in exchange for potential long-term gain.
Mm-hmm.
Look what it took to get the U.S. into World War I, into World War II.
Right.
We
It's
weren't going in.
the system's
We could
almost
see,
set up for to create a problem before you fix the problem.
yeah, and you're likely to get voted out because you're getting us into war. Well, you have to have Pearl Harbor to say, okay, now we're in. A Lusitania to say, okay, now we're in. Democracies are bad at that, and that's an advantage that dictatorships have, because a dictatorship can take, if you like, a lost leader,
Mm-hmm.
roll the dice, um, and take a chance on getting that long-term gain in exchange for some pretty sharp pain at the beginning.
Okay. Another question. Trump always talks about a land swap. And what do you think about Zelensky? Or we already talked about that one. Let me go to this one. Does America and Europe have diverging interests regarding Ukraine? That's a great question. Does America want Russia as an ally against China, and so a Russian defeat is bad for America, or how do you process that? It's a great question.
Yeah, it's a very good question. First of all, it's a pipe dream to think you can split China from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
90% of the electronics that Russia is now using come from China in its war. There is no advantage to China of a Russian defeat. In fact, this was stated baldly by a visiting Chinese minister to Europeans, saying that we see no advantage to China of a Western victory in Russia. Chinese are very astute. They play the long game. They know that Russia is quickly becoming a de facto dependency of China.
Mm-hmm.
So why would they take on any risks when everything is falling in their direction? Remind me of the first part of the question.
It was, does America and Europe have diverging interests regarding Ukraine?
Not until Trump.
Oh, that's interesting. What a way to answer that. Okay.
The U.S., the stalwart part of NATO, always there during the Cold War, and under Biden with the invasion, there was never any doubt that the U.S. and NATO were in sync, that Russia was a threat to Europe, and that Ukraine was the gateway to Europe for Russia. So national interests are stop Russia at Ukraine, or they'll be at the gates of Europe. I think a good way to picture this is a big high dam. Picture the Hoover Dam,
Mm-hmm.
and the dam is labeled Ukraine, and the big lake behind it is labeled Russia, and the land in front of the dam is Europe.
Yep.
And you're seeing little cracks in the dam. So Europe is now fully focused on backing up Ukraine, because if the fighting doesn't stop in Ukraine, then it's going to be bleeding into Europe.
Other than the bromance that you described between Trump and Putin, what policy is driving that? I mean, I understand MAGA is, make America great again. We want to, America first. But I can't see just leaving Europe. I mean, maybe not being so heavily involved, but it's going to catch up with you, right? I mean, like, help us understand why Trump thinks this way.
Because MAGA has been captured by a combination of isolationists. There's always been an isolationist sentiment. Remember, before there was the original America First was headed by Charles Lindbergh, before World War II. And in just months before Pearl Harbor, he had an America First rally at Madison Square Garden, packed out with Nazi flags.
Wow.
And it took Pearl Harbor to change that. So there's always been this isolation. Look, we got these moats called Pacific and Atlantic. Let the rest of the world go to hell in a handbasket. Not our problem. Except in the modern world, yes, it is our problem, as we're starting to see about tariffs and the damage that bad economics, bad trade relations can have within the U.S. Economy. I do
Speak
not
to that
think.
for a moment. What do you think is going to happen there? Well, I mean, it's befuddling to me how Republicans are saying, yeah, tariffs, that's a great idea. Never has that been Republican orthodoxy. So,
Well, the reason is the same reason Republicans aren't speaking up too loudly against Trump's collapse, against the Russian threat. They're intimidated.
oh,
If you speak, there are lots of traditional Republicans who just are keeping their heads down in
so
Congress and elsewhere because they don't want to get the MAGA mob on their case and threaten, we're going to primary you, we're going to primary you, et cetera, et cetera. And the same thing with people who don't believe that tariffs are sensible. They are, in fact, a tax on the American consumer.
yeah,
And yet, if you go against the orthodoxy, you're inviting political peril, and sometimes even physical peril. So the traditional Republicans have not gone away. They've been intimidated into quietude until there's a future event. Remember that the Senate has this secondary sanctions bill ready to go with 84 co-sponsors.
I think it's up to 87 now or 86 or something
Okay,
like
well,
that.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's a unbelievable majority for secondary sanctions against Russian exports of their oil and gas. And Trump has consistently kicked that down the road.
Yeah.
So
That's
there's
just
clearly
bizarre.
appetite. There's clearly political appetite to take action against Russia. It's
For,
being stymied at the top.
for those who are international who don't know, there's 100 U.S. senators. So when you get 87 of anything, like you can't get that kind of agreement on anything unless it's like happy birthday to Millie Smith, who's now 100 years old. I mean, like, that's the only
Right.
place that you're going to get that kind of unanimity. So, okay, I'm going to give you a last question here. Todd says, since Frank is a foreign service guy, I hope that he covers the Russia-Azerbaijan situation. Tell me what you thought about that, because that was a real departure from business as usual in the Soviet sphere.
This is really interesting. It's an excellent question. It's not just Azerbaijan, it's Armenia. Both of them previously part of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Both of them were signed up for this sort of Warsaw Pact light CSTO that Russia tried to put together. They have now clearly indicated that they are no longer going to listen to Russia, which is a very brave thing, especially for Armenia, when it's right there and it's very small. But Armenia flipped when Russian troops stationed in Armenia refused to help Armenia in its decades-long conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh with Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan went in, won the latest of many wars or conflicts over that enclave, and basically drove the Armenians out of it, made it Azerbaijani. And now Azerbaijan, flush with oil revenue and seeing Russia's weakness, is heading to the exits. And a good way to do this is to get Trump on side by coming to an agreement which was already in place, but Trump gets to take credit for.
It seems
So,
like Erdogan, this is just a follow-up to this. Erdogan's becoming a big player in the region, whether it's with Ukraine or with Azerbaijan being like being the guarantor for the region as far as the Caucasus go. Is that fair? It looks like Turkey's a big winner.
Yeah, Turkey is a winner in this, and don't forget Syria as well. They are handholding the new Syrian post-Assad government under al-Sharaa. So Erdogan is feeling his oats. He's loving this because he's the latest sultan in Ottoman II.
Okay. So I've gone a little over an hour. I was trying to only stay at an hour. So I'm going to say thank you to the audience, and we're going to end the stream with thank you for being here and trying to help us understand what we won't otherwise see. Like some of the insights are really, really valuable, like how democracies just won't act in the same ways that autocratic regimes will, and that sort of thing. So I hope people got something out of this. Thank you all, folks. If you can hit the like button on the way out, we appreciate it. And again, thank you for being here, Frank. We greatly, greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure. Always fun to talk with you, Darren, and with your readers.